Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the big courtroom. His hands were behind his back and his face showed no fear. Around him sat creatures from many different worlds. Some looked like giant lizards with blue skin. Others had 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow. A few had tentacles instead of hands. They all stared at him with looks of fear and anger. The room was huge and made of white stone that seemed to glow with its own light. High above, a dome showed the stars of space. Jake had been to many places in the galaxy, but this was the first time he felt like he was on trial for being human. The prosecutor stood up. He was a Valorian with scales that shimmered blue and green in the light. His name was Zektar, and he spoke in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Commander Morrison," Zektar said, "you stand accused of breaking the Zephyrian peace accords. You used excessive force in combat. You showed barbaric warfare tactics that go against all civilized military conduct." Jake said nothing. He had heard these words before during the 3 weeks since his arrest. The translator in his ear made sure he understood every word perfectly. In the gallery behind him, Amy Carter watched everything happen. She was the only other human in the room. Her left arm was still in a metal brace from the battle at Kepler Station. The doctors said she would never have full use of it again. But she was alive, and that was more than could be said for the rest of Jake's unit. Amy remembered the battle clearly. Too clearly. She wished she could forget some of it. It had started as a routine patrol mission. Kepler Station was a mining outpost on the edge of human space. 3,000 people worked there, pulling rare metals from the asteroids nearby. Most of them were families. Kids played in the station's parks, while their parents worked long shifts in the mining ships. Then the Void Syndicate came. The Syndicate was not like other pirates. They did not just steal cargo and leave. They took people. They sold them as slaves to the dark corners of the galaxy where no law could reach them. When they attacked a place, they took everyone they could carry and killed the rest. Jake's unit had been the closest military force when the distress call came, 12 soldiers, in 2 small ships against a syndicate fleet of 20 vessels. Any sane commander would have called for backup and waited. Jake had ordered the attack immediately. Now, months later, Amy watched as the court displayed holographic images of the battle. She saw herself and her fellow soldiers charging into impossible odds. She saw Jake leading them straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. To the aliens watching, it looked like madness. "Look at this footage," Zektar said, pointing at the images floating in the air. Human soldiers throwing themselves at enemy positions with no regard for their own lives. This is not military tactics. This is insanity. The images showed Jake's soldiers boarding syndicate ships even as those ships fired on them. They showed humans fighting hand-to-hand with enemies twice their size. They showed people dying for strangers they had never met. What the images did not show was the why. Amy closed her eyes and remembered what Jake had told them before the battle. "Those people down there are counting on us. If we wait for backup, they'll all be dead or worse. We're going in, and we're going to hold them off long enough for the civilians to evacuate." Someone in the gallery had asked how many of them would make it back. Jake had looked at each of them in turn. "Maybe none of us. But those 3,000 people will go home to their families tonight if we do our job right." No one had argued. No one had refused to go. They had all known the odds, and they had all chosen to accept them. The court did not understand this. To them, Jake's decision looked like he was throwing away the lives of his soldiers for no good reason. They could not see that he was trading 12 lives for 3,000. Tar continued his speech to the court. The defendant's actions resulted in the deaths of 11 human soldiers. Only 1 survived. This level of casualty is unacceptable in any military operation. No civilized species would consider such losses acceptable. A judge with purple skin and 3 eyes spoke up. "Commander Morrison, why did you not wait for reinforcements? Your own records show that a full battle group was only 6 hours away." Jake spoke for the first time that day. His voice was calm and steady. In 6 hours, every civilian on that station would have been dead or taken. We had a job to do. The purple judge looked confused. But you knew your soldiers would die. How is that acceptable? Because that's what soldiers do, Jake said. We signed up to protect people who can't protect themselves. If that means we die doing it, then that's what happens. The courtroom fell silent. The alien judges looked at each other with expressions that the translator could not convert into words. They spoke in whispers that the humans could not hear. Amy remembered the evacuation, while Jake's unit held off the Syndicate fleet. Civilian transports had fled Kepler Station, families running for their lives while human soldiers died to buy them time. She had watched good people die so that people they had never met could live. The evacuation had taken 4 hours. 4 hours of continuous fighting against impossible odds. When it was over, the station was destroyed and Jake's unit was gone. All except Emmy, who had been blown out of an airlock and picked up by a rescue ship. The Syndicate had retreated with heavy losses and no prisoners. The 3,000 civilians had escaped to safety. By any human measure, the mission had been a complete success. By Galactic standards, it had been a disaster. Qatar played more footage. This time it showed human soldiers holding a corridor while explosions tore apart the walls around them. They could have retreated. They could have saved themselves. Instead, they had stayed and fought until the last civilian transport was clear. This is not courage, Zektar said. This is a dangerous mental condition. Humans fight as if death means nothing to them. They make military decisions that no rational species would consider. They are unpredictable and therefore dangerous to serve alongside. The lead judge, a tall creature with silver skin and no visible eyes, spoke in a voice like wind through trees. The court recognizes that the human military has achieved several notable victories. However, the cost in lives has been deemed excessive by galactic standards. The question before us is whether humans can be trusted to operate within the accepted parameters of civilized warfare. Jake looked up at the judge. With respect, Your Honor, the parameters of civilized warfare don't mean much to the people who need protection. The Syndicate doesn't follow your rules. Neither do the other threats out there. Sometimes you have to be willing to pay the price to get the job done. The silver judge was quiet for a long moment. And you believe this price is acceptable? Jake's voice was steady. I believe that 3,000 people went home to their families because 12 soldiers did their job. If that's not acceptable to you, then we have very different ideas about what military service means. Amy watched the judges whisper among themselves again. She could see the fear in their alien faces. They were not afraid of human weapons or human technology. They were afraid of human thinking. They could not understand a species that would willingly die for strangers. The trial would continue for days. There would be more testimony, more evidence, more arguments about human military conduct. But Amy already knew how it would end. The galaxy was afraid of humanity, and fear made people do stupid things. She just hoped that Jake would survive whatever came next. Dr. Lisa Bennett walked through the halls of the Research Institute on Haven Prime. The building was made of smooth white material that felt warm to the touch. Windows showed the purple sky of the alien world where 3 suns hung like jewels. Scientists from dozens of species worked together here, sharing knowledge that could help the entire galaxy. But today, Lisa felt more alone than ever. She carried a datapad filled with research that no one wanted to read. For 5 years, she had studied the differences between human and alien minds. Her work explained why humans acted differently in combat. It explained why other species feared them. But the galactic scientific community had ignored her papers, calling them too dangerous to publish widely. Lisa stopped at her office door and pressed her hand to the scanner. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside, the walls were covered with charts and diagrams showing the evolutionary history of different species. At the center of it all was a large display showing the human family tree, stretching back millions of years. She was not alone in her office. Captain Ryan Walsh sat in the chair across from her desk, studying the display with interest. He was a military attached from Earth. sent to Haven Prime to find answers about the ongoing restrictions on human military service. Dr. Bennett, Ryan said, standing as she entered. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Lisa set down her datapad and looked at the tall man in the blue uniform. She had known this conversation would come eventually. The trial of Jake Morrison had brought unwanted attention to her work. Captain Walsh, she said, I assume you're here about my research on comparative psychology. Ryan nodded. Command wants to understand why the Galactic Council is so afraid of human soldiers. Your work is the only thing that makes sense of it. Lisa sat down and activated her computer. The wall display changed to show brain scans of different species. Human brains were highlighted in blue, while alien brains appeared in various other colors. The answer is evolution, Lisa said. Every species in the galaxy evolved differently. Those differences shaped how they think about survival, combat, and death. Ryan leaned forward. Can you explain it in terms a soldier can understand? Lisa smiled slightly. Most of the species in the Galactic Council evolved as prey animals. The Valorians, for example, came from creatures that were hunted by large predators on their home world. Their entire psychology is built around avoiding death at all costs. She changed the display to show a Valorian brain scan. Certain areas glowed brighter than others. See this region here? Lisa pointed to a bright yellow area. That's their fear center. It's 3 times larger than the same area in a human brain. When a Valorian soldier faces danger, every instinct tells them to run or hide. They only fight when they have overwhelming advantages. Ryan studied the scan. What about the others? The Zephyrians. The Centauri? Lisa switched to other brain scans. The Zephyrians evolved as herd animals. They think in terms of group survival, but the group always comes before the individual. If saving one Zephyrian costs the lives of 2 others, they won't do it. The mathematics of survival are very simple for them. And the Centauri? Highly social species. They evolved in large communities where cooperation was essential for survival. They're excellent at working together, but they can't understand why anyone would sacrifice themselves for strangers outside their social group. Ryan was quiet for a moment. And humans? Lisa changed the display to show a human brain scan. The pattern was completely different from the alien ones. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, she said. We were predators who hunted prey by chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion. This required incredible endurance and the ability to ignore pain and fear. She highlighted different areas of the human brain. Our fear centers are smaller than most species, but our areas for determination and goal-focused thinking are much larger. We evolved to push through obstacles that would stop other creatures. Ryan looked at the display with new understanding. So when humans fight, we're using instincts that other species never developed. Exactly, Lisa said. But that's not the most important difference. She switched to a new display showing social behavior patterns across different species. Humans are the only species that developed what we call abstract loyalty. Most aliens are loyal to their family, their pack, or their immediate community. Humans developed loyalty to ideas, concepts, and complete strangers. Lisa pulled up footage from various human military operations. The scenes showed human soldiers fighting to protect people they had never met, in places they had never been, for causes they believed in. This is what terrifies the Galactic Council, she said. They can understand fighting for your own survival or for your family's survival. They can't understand fighting for abstract concepts like honor, duty, or the protection of innocent people. Ryan watched the footage with growing realization. They think we're insane. Worse than that, Lisa said. They think we're unpredictable. Every military doctrine in the galaxy is based on the assumption that soldiers will prioritize their own survival above all else. Human soldiers break that assumption. She showed him recordings of alien military exercises. The tactics were careful, methodical, designed to minimize casualties while achieving objectives. Every move was calculated to preserve as many lives as possible. Now watch this, Lisa said, switching to footage of human military training. The difference was obvious. Human soldiers trained for scenarios where heavy casualties were expected. They practiced tactics that assumed some soldiers would die to achieve the mission. They prepared for situations where the mission was more important than their own lives. This is what the Galactic Council can't accept, Lisa said. Human military doctrine is built on the assumption that sometimes soldiers must die to protect others. Alien military doctrine is built on the assumption that losing soldiers is always a failure. Ryan was beginning to understand. So when Jake Morrison ordered his unit to attack the Syndicate fleet, he was making a decision that no alien commander would ever make. Exactly. From a human perspective, trading 12 soldiers for 3,000 civilians was an obvious choice. From an alien perspective, it was incomprehensible madness. Lisa brought up more data showing casualty ratios from various military operations. Human forces consistently achieve their objectives with casualty rates that other species considered catastrophic. The aliens have run computer models of human military operations, she said. They've tried to understand our tactics, our decision-making processes, our apparent disregard for death. What they found scared them. What did they find? Lisa's voice was quiet. They found that human military thinking is so different from their own that they can't predict what we'll do. In their minds, that makes us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Ryan stood and walked to the window. Outside, alien students moved across the campus, going about their normal lives. It was hard to believe that these peaceful creatures were afraid of humanity. Dr. Bennett, he said, have you shared this research with the Galactic Council? Lisa laughed bitterly. I've tried. They classify it as dangerous information. They say it could be used to develop weapons or military strategies. They don't want to admit that their fear of humans is based on their own evolutionary limitations. What do you think will happen to Commander Morrison? Lisa looked at her data one more time. I think they'll use him as an example. They'll say that human military thinking is too dangerous for civilized warfare. They'll restrict human military operations even further, Ryan turned back to her, unless we can make them understand. Captain Walsh, Lisa said, I've been trying to make them understand for 5 years. The problem isn't lack of information. The problem is that they don't want to understand. Understanding would mean admitting that their entire military philosophy is based on assumptions that don't apply to humans. She paused and looked at the brain scans on her wall. It would mean admitting that maybe, sometimes, the willingness to die for others is not insanity. Maybe it's the highest form of courage. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Bennett, I need copies of all your research. Everything you have on human-alien psychological differences. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to make sure the right people see it. People who can use this information to help Commander Morrison and change how the galaxy sees humanity. Lisa nodded and began copying files to a secure data chip. As she worked, she hoped that finally, after all these years, someone would listen to what she had learned. The galaxy was afraid of humans not because they were violent or aggressive, but because they were willing to sacrifice themselves for others. In a universe where survival was the highest priority, that kind of selflessness was more terrifying than any weapon. Admiral Kate Johnson sat in her private office aboard the EDS Horizon, the largest ship in the Earth Defense Fleet. The office was small but comfortable, with a view of the stars through a thick window. On her desk lay a folder marked with symbols. That meant it was classified at the highest level. The folder had arrived 3 hours ago through channels that officially did not exist. Someone in the Galactic Council had leaked information that could change everything. Kate had read the contents twice, and each time the words seemed more unbelievable. A soft chime announced that someone was at her door. Kate quickly closed the folder and placed it in her desk drawer. Come in, she called. Colonel Steve Rodriguez entered the office. He was Kate's intelligence chief, a man who had spent 20 years learning the secrets that governments tried to hide. His face was serious as he sat down across from her desk. Admiral, Steve said, I've been analyzing the data from our contacts in the Council. What I found is disturbing. Kate nodded. I assume you're talking about the Morrison case? It goes much deeper than that, Steve said. He activated a small holographic projector and placed it on the desk. Images appeared in the air between them, showing military battle reports and statistical analyses. These are classified Galactic Council military assessments, Steve explained. They've been studying human combat performance for the past 10 years. Every battle, every engagement, every time humans have fought alongside alien forces. Kate studied the floating images. Charts showed casualty rates, victory percentages, and tactical effectiveness ratings. The human numbers were unlike anything she had ever seen. Steve, these statistics can't be right, she said. They're showing human forces achieving impossible success rates. That's what I thought too, Steve replied. So I double-checked everything. The numbers are accurate. Human military units consistently achieve objectives with casualty rates. That would cause immediate surrender in any other species. He highlighted specific battles on the display. Look at the defense of Titan colony. Human forces held their positions with 80% casualties. The Zephyrian military computer models say any rational force would have surrendered at 30%. Kate remembered that battle. She had been a captain then, fighting alongside aliens who kept asking why the humans wouldn't retreat. At the time, she had thought they were cowards. Now she was beginning to understand that they simply thought differently. What about the asteroid mining station incident? She asked. Steve brought up new data. Commander Morrison's unit took 92% casualties but achieved complete mission success. The alien analysis concludes that the mission should have been impossible with the forces available. Kate leaned back in her chair. They're not just afraid of our casualties. They're afraid of our effectiveness. Exactly, Steve said. The Council has realized that human military thinking gives us advantages they can't counter. We don't just fight harder than other species. We fight smarter in ways they can't predict. He changed the display to show tactical analyses from several battles. Look at this. Human commanders consistently make decisions that alien military doctrine considers suicidal. But those decisions work because we're willing to pay costs that other species won't accept. Kate studied the tactical maps. She could see the pattern now. Human forces would take positions that seemed impossible to hold, make attacks that seemed doomed to fail, and sacrifice units in ways that looked like tactical mistakes. But every time, the seemingly impossible worked because humans were willing to die for their objectives. The aliens have spent years trying to understand our military success, Steve continued. They've analyzed our equipment, our training, our command structure. They found that we don't have any significant technological advantages. So what's their conclusion? Steve's expression grew grim. They've concluded that human psychology is a weapon they can't defend against. We fight like we expect to die, which makes us unpredictable and therefore dangerous. Kate opened her desk drawer and pulled out the classified folder. Steve, I need to show you something. This came from a source inside the council itself. She handed him the folder. Steve opened it and began reading. His face grew pale as he worked through the documents. Admiral, he said quietly, this is a recording of a closed council session. They're discussing the human problem in their military alliance. Kate nodded. Read the highlighted section. Steve found the passage and read aloud. The Zephyrian Defense Minister states, human forces demonstrate a willingness to accept casualty rates that would cause immediate surrender in any other species. This psychological advantage renders traditional military doctrine useless against them. He looked up at Kate. They're not just afraid of us. They're afraid that we'll make their military thinking obsolete. Kate stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see other ships of the Earth Defense Fleet moving in formation. Good ships with good crews, following orders that might get them killed, just like human soldiers had always done. There's more, she said. Keep reading. Steve continued through the document. The Valorian War Council admits they have never encountered a species that would willingly enter battles with near-certain death rates. Their entire military philosophy is built on calculating acceptable risk versus potential gain? Humans routinely exceed those calculations. Kate turned back to him. Steve, they're not restricting human military participation to protect the galaxy from us. They're doing it to protect themselves from being shown up. Steve set down the folder. Admiral, if this information is accurate, then the Morrison trial is just the beginning. They're going to use it as justification to ban humans from military operations entirely. Kate returned to her desk and activated her personal communicator. I need to speak with General Tony Mitchell on Earth, Priority 1. While they waited for the connection, Steve continued reading the leaked documents. Admiral, listen to this. It's from the Centauri Alliance military assessment. Human tactical decisions consistently prioritize mission success over force preservation. This approach achieves objectives that our doctrine considers impossible, but at costs we consider unacceptable. The communicator chimed as the connection was established. General Mitchell's face appeared on the screen. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. Kate knew he had been following the Morrison trial closely. Kate, Mitchell said, I assume this is about the Council's decision on human military participation. General, I have information that changes everything, Kate replied. The Council isn't afraid of human aggression. They're afraid of human effectiveness. She transmitted the leaked documents to Mitchell's secure terminal. As he read, his expression grew angry. These documents prove that the Council has been lying about their reasons for restricting human forces, Mitchell said. They claim it's about excessive casualties, but their own analysis shows that human tactics are simply more effective than their own. Steve spoke up. General, the documents also show that they've been studying human military operations for years. They've learned that our willingness to accept casualties gives us tactical advantages they can't match. Mitchell nodded grimly. Which means they see us as a threat to their military supremacy. If human tactical thinking spreads to other species, it could revolutionize warfare across the galaxy. Kate felt a chill as she realized the implications. General, they're not just trying to control human military operations. They're trying to suppress human military knowledge entirely. The Morrison trial is their way of establishing legal precedent, Mitchell agreed. If they can prove that human military thinking is barbaric or uncivilized, they can justify banning it completely. Steve pulled up another document. General, there's something else. The Council has been developing new military doctrines specifically designed to counter human tactics. They're preparing for the possibility that they might have to fight human forces. Kate and Mitchell exchanged worried looks. The implications were clear and terrifying. Admiral, Mitchell said, I need you to prepare a full analysis of these documents. We need to understand exactly what the Council knows about human military capabilities and what they're planning to do about it. Kate nodded. What about Commander Morrison? Mitchell's expression hardened. Morrison is going to become a symbol, whether he wants to or not. The Council will use him to justify their fears about human military thinking. We need to be ready to respond. As the transmission ended, Kate looked at the classified documents spread across her desk. The galaxy was afraid of humanity, but not for the reasons anyone had expected. They were afraid because humans had proven that their entire approach to warfare was wrong. The question now was what humanity would do with that knowledge. Ambassador Helen Parker stood at the entrance of the Galactic Council chambers, holding a small recording device that could destroy the reputation of every alien leader inside. The device was no bigger than her thumb, but it contained hours of secret conversations that would shock the galaxy. Helen had spent 6 months gathering this evidence. She had used every contact, every favor, and every diplomatic trick she knew. The information had cost her career, her reputation, and possibly her life. But it would save Commander Morrison and change how the galaxy saw humanity forever. The chamber doors opened with a deep rumble. Inside, representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in curved rows that rose toward the ceiling. At the center of it all was the speaker's platform, where Helen would present her evidence to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Helen walked down the long aisle toward the platform. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. Alien faces turned to watch her pass. Some showed curiosity, others showed fear, and a few showed anger. They all knew why she was here. The Speaker of the Council was a tall creature with silver skin and no visible eyes. Its voice sounded like wind through metal pipes when it spoke. "Ambassador Parker," the Speaker said, "you have requested emergency session time to present new evidence in the Morrison case. The Council recognizes your right to speak." Helen activated the recording device and connected it to the chamber's communication system. Her voice would be heard by every being in the room and broadcast to their home worlds. "Honored representatives," Helen began, "I come before you today with evidence that will change everything you think you know about human military operations and the charges against Commander Morrison." She held up the recording device. "This contains recordings of private council sessions where the true reasons for restricting human military participation were discussed openly." A murmur ran through the chamber. Several alien representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Valorian delegate Zektar stood up. "Ambassador Parker," Zektar said, "the Council's private deliberations are classified. Any recordings of such sessions would be illegal." Helen smiled. "The source of these recordings is a matter of galactic security. What matters is their content and what they reveal about the Council's true motivations." She activated the first recording. The voice of the Zephyrian Defense Minister filled the chamber. "Humans fight as if they expect to die. Every other species fights to live. This fundamental difference makes them unpredictable and therefore dangerous to our established order." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Helen let the noise die down before continuing. "As you can hear," she said, "the Council's own military leaders admit that humans are not being restricted because of excessive aggression or barbaric tactics. They are being restricted because human military thinking is different from alien military thinking." She played another recording. This time it was the Valorian War Council. "We have never encountered a species that would willingly enter battles with near certain death rates. Our entire military philosophy is built on calculating acceptable risk versus potential gain. Humans routinely exceed those calculations." More shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Helen could see fear in the eyes of the alien representatives. Not fear of human weapons or technology, but fear of being exposed. "The Council has been lying to the galaxy," Helen continued. "They claim that human military operations are too costly in lives, too barbaric for civilized warfare. But their own private discussions reveal the truth." She played a third recording. The voice belonged to the Centauri Alliance Supreme Commander. "Human tactical decisions consistently prioritize mission success over force preservation. This approach achieves objectives that our doctrine considers impossible, but at costs we consider unacceptable." Helen paused the recording and looked around the chamber. "The Council is not afraid of human aggression. They are afraid of human effectiveness. They are afraid that human military thinking will make their own military doctrines obsolete." The Speaker tried to restore order as representatives began arguing among themselves. Some demanded that Helen stop the recordings. Others wanted to hear more. The chamber was dividing into factions before her eyes. Helen played more recordings. Each one revealed another aspect of the Council's true fears. They were afraid that other species would adopt human military tactics. They were afraid that human willingness to sacrifice for others would spread throughout the galaxy. They were afraid that their careful, casualty-avoiding military philosophy would be proven wrong. "The most damning evidence," Helen said, "comes from the Council's own military analysis of human combat operations." She played a recording of the full Council in closed session. The Speaker's own voice could be heard clearly. "The human military achieves success rates that our computer models say are impossible. They do this not through superior technology or numbers, but through psychological approaches that we cannot comprehend or counter." Helen stopped the recording and let the words sink in. "The Council's own analysis proves that human military operations are not barbaric or uncivilized. They are simply more effective than alien operations." She activated the final recording. This one was from a recent security briefing. If human military thinking spreads to other species, it could revolutionize warfare across the galaxy. Our current military establishments would become obsolete overnight. We cannot allow this to happen. The chamber fell silent. Helen had just played a recording that proved the Council was actively working to suppress human military knowledge to protect their own power. Commander Morrison is not on trial for excessive casualties or barbaric warfare, Helen announced. He is on trial because he proved that human military thinking is superior to alien military thinking. The Council wants to make him an example to prevent other species from adopting human tactics. The Valorian delegate stood up again. These recordings are fabricated. They are human propaganda designed to discredit the Council. Helen smiled and activated another device. I anticipated that accusation. This is a quantum verification scanner. It can prove the authenticity of any recording by analyzing the quantum signatures of the sound waves. The scanner confirmed that all the recordings were genuine and unaltered. There was no way to deny their authenticity. The Council has been caught in a lie, Helen said. They have been restricting human military participation not to protect the galaxy from human aggression, but to protect themselves from being shown up by human effectiveness. She turned to address the entire chamber. The Battle of Kepler Station was not a military disaster. It was a tactical masterpiece. Commander Morrison saved 3,000 lives by making a decision that no alien commander would have made. He traded 12 soldiers for 3,000 civilians because he understood something that the Council cannot accept. Helen's voice grew stronger. He understood that sometimes the greatest victory requires the greatest sacrifice. That sometimes the only way to save lives is to be willing to lose them. That sometimes courage means accepting death to protect others. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the most hostile representatives were listening. The Council's own records show that human military operations consistently achieve objectives that alien forces consider impossible. Helen continued. We do this not through superior technology or numbers, but through superior commitment to the mission and to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. She held up the recording device one final time. This evidence proves that the charges against Commander Morrison are false. He is not a war criminal. He is a hero who did what had to be done to save innocent lives. Helen paused and looked directly at the speaker. The real question this Council must answer is why they are so afraid of a species that is willing to die for others. Why they see self-sacrifice as a threat to galactic order. Why they want to suppress the one military philosophy that consistently saves the most lives. She turned to leave the platform. I submit this evidence to the Council and to the galaxy. Let them decide who the real barbarians are. As Helen walked back up the aisle, the chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives were shouting, arguing, and demanding explanations. The careful order of the Council was falling apart, but Helen had accomplished what she came to do. The truth was out, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Captain Greg Thompson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching as alien ships moved into formation around his vessel. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Parker's revelation at the Galactic Council. The recordings she had played had split the galaxy into 2 camps. Some species wanted to understand humanity better. Others wanted to ban human military operations completely. The compromise had been this joint exercise. Humans and aliens would work together on a training mission that alien military academies had declared impossible. If the humans succeeded, they would be granted full military integration rights. If they failed, the restrictions would become permanent. Greg looked at his crew. Navigation Officer Lavra Kim checked her instruments one final time. Chief Engineer Don Roberts monitored the ship's power systems from his station. Around the bridge, 20 other crew members prepared for what might be their most important mission ever. Captain, Lavra said, we're receiving the exercise parameters. From the alien command ship, Greg nodded. Put it on the main screen. The display showed a massive asteroid field with an automated defense network protecting a simulated colony. The objective was simple: disable the defenses and rescue the colonists. What made it impossible was the sheer number of automated weapons, and the fact that any ship entering the field would face overwhelming firepower. "Sir," Don said from his engineering station, "the alien tactical computers rate this scenario as having a 0% success rate. They say no force could penetrate those defenses without taking 100% casualties." Greg studied the display. He could see why the aliens thought it was impossible. The defense network was designed to destroy anything that entered the asteroid field. Ships that tried to fight their way through would be torn apart long before they reached the colony, but Greg was not thinking like an alien commander. "Lavra," he said, "how long would it take us to reach the colony if we went straight through the center of the field?" Lavra ran the calculations. 8 minutes, sir. But we would face continuous fire from over 200 weapon platforms. Done. Greg continued, "How long can our shields hold against that kind of firepower?" Dan checked his readings. "Maybe 3 minutes, sir. 4 if we divert all power from non-essential systems." Greg smiled. "Then we'll make it in 3 minutes. The alien observers on nearby ships watched in confusion as the Defiant began moving toward the asteroid field. According to their calculations, the human ship was about to commit suicide. "Sir," LeVar said, "the alien fleet commander is requesting clarification of our attack plan." "Tell him we're going to rescue the colonists," Greg replied. "What about the defenses, sir?" Greg activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to enter a shooting gallery that's designed to kill us. Our shields will fail before we reach the objective. Some of us probably won't make it home." He paused and looked around the bridge. Every face showed determination, not fear. "But there are people in that colony counting on us to get them out. We're going to do that, no matter what it costs. All stations prepare for combat." The Defiant entered the asteroid field at full speed. Immediately, automated weapons began firing from hidden positions throughout the field. Energy blasts and missiles filled the space around the ship. The alien observers watched their sensors in disbelief. The human ship was not trying to avoid the weapons fire. It was not using cover or evasive maneuvers. It was flying straight toward the objective while taking massive damage. "Shield strength at 60%, Don reported. "Hull temperature rising. We're taking hits faster than the shields can absorb them." "Maintain course," Greg ordered. "How much time left?" 2 minutes to target, LeVar said. "But sir, the forward shields are failing." Greg switched power from weapons to shields. The Defiant was no longer shooting back at the defense platforms. It was simply absorbing punishment while racing toward the colony. The alien fleet commander sent another message. "Human vessel, your tactical approach is suicidal. Withdraw immediately, before you lose your entire crew." Greg ignored the message. "Shield strength?" he asked Don. 20% and falling fast, sir. We're going to lose them in the next 30 seconds. Time to target? 90 seconds, sir." Greg made a decision that no alien commander would ever make. "Don, shut down life support and transfer all power to the shields. Emergency oxygen only." Dan's hands moved across his controls. The ship's lights dimmed as life support systems went offline. Every bit of available power went to keeping the shields operational for just a few more seconds. The alien observers were no longer watching their instruments. They were staring out their windows at the Defiant as it pushed through impossible firepower. The human ship was glowing red from heat damage. Parts of its hull were melting, but it kept moving forward. "Shields at 5%, Don reported. "Sir, we're not going to make it." Greg looked at his crew. They all knew they were probably going to die in the next minute. But none of them suggested retreating. None of them asked to abort the mission. "Lavra," Greg said calmly, "prepare emergency docking procedures. We're going in whether we have shields or not." The shields failed 15 seconds before the Defiant reached the colony. Direct energy hits began burning through the ship's hull. Fires broke out on several decks. The engineering section took a direct hit that killed 3 crew members instantly, but the Defiant kept moving. the ship slammed into the colony's docking bay with enough force to crack the hull in 2 places. Automatic fire suppressors engaged. As the crew rushed to evacuate the simulated colonists. "Colony secured," Lavar reported. "All simulated casualties rescued." The exercise was over. The Defiant had achieved its objective, but at a cost that alien military doctrine considered unacceptable. The ship was heavily damaged. 6 crew members were seriously injured. 3 were dead. By alien standards, it was a complete disaster. By human standards, it was a successful mission. The alien fleet commander's face appeared on the main screen. He was a centauri with 4 arms and golden skin. His expression showed confusion and something that might have been respect. "Captain Thompson," the alien commander said, "your tactical approach was completely against all accepted military doctrine. You achieved your objective, but the cost in lives and equipment was enormous." Greg nodded. "Yes, sir. That's how humans fight. We accept the costs necessary to complete the mission." "But why?" the alien asked. "Why would you sacrifice your crew? For a training exercise?" Greg thought about his answer carefully. Because this wasn't really about a training exercise, was it? This was about proving that humans can be trusted to do what needs to be done, no matter what it costs us. He gestured toward his damaged ship. "Every person on this crew knew they might die today. They came anyway because they believed the mission was important. That's what humans do. We die for things that matter." The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, I have spent my entire career trying to minimize casualties and preserve lives. Your approach seems wasteful and brutal." "Sir," Greg replied, "sometimes the only way to preserve life is to be willing to sacrifice it. Sometimes the only way to save people is to accept that good soldiers will die saving them." The communication ended, leaving Greg alone with his thoughts. Around him, his crew worked to repair the damage to their ship. None of them complained about the cost of the mission. None of them regretted their decision to push forward when retreat would have been safer. 2 hours later, the results came in. The Galactic Council had voted to grant humans full military integration rights. The vote had been close, but the demonstration had convinced enough species that human military thinking, while different, was not barbaric. Greg received a message from Admiral Johnson on Earth. "Captain Thompson," she said, "the Council has also established new protocols for joint operations. They want to study human tactical approaches and possibly integrate some of our methods into their own doctrine." Greg smiled. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand that being willing to die for others was not insanity, it was courage of the highest order. "Sir," Lavar said from her station, "we're receiving requests from 17 different alien military academies. They want to send, observers to study human training methods." Greg looked out at the alien ships surrounding the Defiant. For the first time in galactic history, they were not looking at humans with fear. They were looking with respect and a desire to understand. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. Sometimes the species that seems most dangerous is actually the one most willing to protect others. Sometimes the warriors who accept death most readily are the ones most dedicated to preserving life. Human military thinking was no longer seen as a threat to galactic order. It was seen as its greatest protection.